Good evening, guys. Yes, am I audible to the online students? And why so less strength? Where are the usual suspects? They were already in the class, na? I have also come from that building. So it's raining, they should not leave then. Right? A lot of you also have come from the other building. You have come from the other building, right? Okay, anyway, so let's get started. Just a minute. Yes, online students, I hope you can hear me, right? Sure. Okay, so let's look at the news that we will discuss. First is the 21st Annual Global Investors Conference. Now, when this happens, it's not much important where it is happening and all that, but whatever is said in this conference becomes important with respect to the concept that is being mentioned, or with respect to the trend that is being mentioned, or with respect to the questions which can be asked in mains. Basically, the government representative, some minister or someone would every year go here and say certain things. Of course, all the things would be positive, right? But when we look at it, there can be certain concerns, so we will look at it a very holistic perception as such. Second thing is the GST 2.0. Now, since GST 2.0 has been launched, every other day you will find some or the other article talking about some or the other constituent elements, let's say articles, goods, services, a sector which is getting benefited, a sector which is getting harmed, so on and so forth. So it becomes very specific but important because health is an important topic in your studies. Then next is about the China and its relation with the rare earth minerals. So we will see very interesting things about this rare earth mineral, how China is controlling its the total amount of reserves also is quite high in China, but the processing, extraction and the final output is way higher. We'll see how that is being made possible. So they own around close to 50% of the reserves they are owning. But when it comes to the final output of the amount of rare earth minerals that is being produced or being traded or used in the world, then China is actually having close to 80-85% share in that. So we will see how is that possible, and we will also see whether rare earth minerals are actually rare or not. Then the next is the cotton cultivation in India. Related to cotton and its cultivation, we have seen in one of the previous current affairs classes about it. But right now what has happened in cotton cultivation is the import tariff has been reduced, right? So since the import tariff on cotton has been reduced, what impact it will have in the Indian scenario is what we will see. First, I will ask you that what impact can you imagine that it will have, and then we will see what it actually does. And then last is good with respect to prelims, the SPRE 2025. So it is like a scheme only. It is a scheme for registering the employees, right? So the employer needs to register their employees. Now, what does this mean? Why the people were not registering so far? What are the provisions in the scheme which will actually make the people to register their employees, and what impact it can have? We will see all that. Basically, its impact is related with respect to, we have talked about converting the unorganized sector into the organized sector. That will help us to calculate our GDP, that will bring people in the tax net, that will increase our tax net, that will increase our tax collection. The people also who are in the unorganized sector, when converts into organized sector, they will also get benefits, so on and so forth. So by registering, when the organization registers their employee, you have the limit. If you are 10 employees or more and using electricity, there are certain guidelines that you have to follow. If you have 20 employees or more without the use of electricity, there are certain guidelines that you have to follow. If the company is not even registering their employees, so the government will not know whether you are having more than 10 employees or not. The moment you start registering, the government will get to know. So it will help also from the unorganized sector to get converted to the organized sector as such. Okay, so this is what we will discuss. Let's start with the very first thing, that is the address by the Union Minister of Commerce and Industry. So we will see, what's his name? That's not important, but that is what I wanted to say. Of course, he is Piyush Goyal. Okay? Now, what he has said, let's discuss that, and those themes are going to become very important. I believe this vision of Viksit Bharat, that means developed India by 2047, is a very important theme. Though this year's essays were completely code based, you can get an essay on that. So what all he has seen, let us understand that. He has, of course, given the speech from the platform of the Global Investor Conference. So this is the key highlights of his speech. He mentioned about the 7.8% of growth rate of GDP in Q1. Okay? Now, this growth rate is good, but this growth rate, of course, is the growth in the real GDP. This is the growth in the real GDP. What is our nominal growth? What is our nominal growth? Right? Yes, nominal growth. Anyone has any idea what is the nominal growth presently that India is having? It's here, 8.8. So, see, why we are focusing on this is, he has mentioned about a very high growth rate of India, that is 7.8. Now that 7.8 is the real GDP. So if we look at this, this is the real GDP comparison. Whenever you compare GDP, you compare year on year or quarter on quarter. So this is the Q1 of financial year 25. This is the Q1 of financial year 26. So the real GDP last year was 6.5. This year it's 7.8. 7.8. Not year, the quarter. But if you look at the nominal GDP, the nominal GDP last Q1 of 25 was 10.8, and Q1 of this financial year is 8.8. That means what? What does this mean? What impact does it have? G? Real GDP 6.5, nominal GDP 10.8 in Q1 of 25. Real GDP 7.8 and nominal GDP 8.8 in Q1 of 26. So what does this suggest? This suggests that there was high inflation in the Q1 of the last financial year, and there is low inflation in the Q1 of this financial year. So, remember the economic survey reference which I always give, wherein the economic survey has mentioned that the inflation will come down even though we reduce the interest rates, and we have seen that inflation has actually come down. So this is one positive thing. Your real GDP is growing at a higher rate, nominal GDP is less, so the inflation is less. But what is the downside of this? What is the downside of this? G? Growth rate is high, na? Real GDP growth rate is high. Inflation is less. See, the issue is when inflation is less, means what? The demand is not that high. Demand supply mismatch is less. That means demand is not much high in the economy. When the demand is not much high in the economy, we can be on a trend of lowering of the demand of the people. Right? So inflation is having a lot of reasons. One of the reason can be very low demand. And if the demand is low, of course this situation is helpful for all of us. But this situation is not helpful when you talk about fiscal deficit ratio. Fiscal deficit ratio is the ratio of fiscal deficit to GDP. Then you have debt to GDP ratio. Debt to GDP ratio is the ratio of debt to GDP. In both the cases, the GDP that you take into consideration is the nominal GDP. Remember this for your prelims. In fiscal debt ratio, when you have the fiscal deficit to the GDP ratio, in debt to GDP ratio, you have debt upon the GDP. So in both the cases, this GDP which is in the denominator is the nominal GDP. And since it's the nominal GDP, what is going to happen is, since the nominal GDP is less, your debt to GDP ratio will be high. Your fiscal debt to GDP ratio will be high. So if you look at the macroeconomic fiscal parameters of the government, we have a target of 4.4% of fiscal deficit to GDP. Fiscal deficit should be 4.4% of what? Of GDP. So basically 4.4% is what? Fiscal deficit to GDP ratio, right? So if nominal GDP does not increase, we will not be able to achieve our fiscal deficit target as well as our debt to GDP target. Is that clear? Any doubt in this? Okay. Next, the private investment has of course increased. This is a positive in this Q1. The FDI has also increased. Okay. Now, the private investment has increased, but his speech, one thing does not talk about, but we should know is the investment in capex has gone down by 7.5%. The investment in capital expenditure has gone down by 7.5%. So that means the expenditure is increasing. You know, let's say you have a business. So you say the investment is increased, the expenditure is increased, everything is increased. But in the capital goods, the expenditure is not increasing. That means your revenue expenditure is increasing. That means the investment that is coming is basically being utilized in revenue expenditure. That means in the coming future, more revenue generation capacity is not going to increase. Is that clear? Okay? Are you guys understanding at the back? Any doubts? Any doubts? Right? So that is why we took this article, why it is important. See, you could read this article, you can understand all this, but what is the flip side of it? Okay? So this is the flip side of it. As far as CPI is concerned, yes, CPI is lowest in the last few years. CPI inflation is 2.07%. WPI inflation is about 0.52%. So they are on the very low side. Next, manufacturing. In manufacturing, PMI is 17.5, which is the all-year high. Now, what is PMI? This is Purchasing Managers Index. This is Purchasing Managers Index. Purchasing Managers Index is brought out for the industry sector separately and the services sector separately. So in industry, basically the manufacturing. For the industrial sector, it is at an all-year high. What does the Purchasing Manager Index does? It anticipates the amount of production that is going to happen in the next month. And it gives the data in advance so that the industry can take a very aware decision. Because every data, index of industrial production, core industries index, they all come in the aftermath of the production has taken place. But Purchasing Manager Index is an estimation of how much production that is going to happen in the next month. Okay? It is published by a Japanese firm called as Nikkei. Okay? It's published by, not that important, but you should know that it's published by a Japanese firm known as Nikkei. Okay? Any questions? Next. He has mentioned about GST simplifying taxation, which is very correct. GST has simplified taxation. There are few important things you should know about. What you should know about the inverted duty structure. Inverted duty structure means the raw materials are charged at a higher GST rate than the finished goods. So certain articles in which, for example, you have the steel at 5% and the cycle that is made up of steel is at 18%. So these anomalies you should remember. Rest of the thing, it's fair enough, not that important. Okay? Now, what are the key challenges in front of India's economy? The first key challenge is with respect to the external challenge. This is an external challenge. That is what? The global protectionism that is happening in the world. For example, USA imposing tariff on India. For example, Europe not ready to come up with a free trade agreement with us until and unless their demands are met. Same is the case with respect to India and Canada, India and Europe. Because of protectionism, we are finding it way more difficult. Same is the case with India and European Union. India and European Union. The talks with respect to India and European Union's bilateral free trade agreement, it's of course various countries are involved. Since when did the talk start? Yes, tell me. 2021. The talks started in 2007. The talk started in 2007, then it was like a dead end. and then in 2022 it reinitiated, that it was revived, and presently the talks are ongoing. So it's been almost 2 decades that it is going on. The challenges here is, see, it has to be passed by the European Union altogether. So there are multiple countries involved having different requirements from India. Okay? So it is having a huge issue. So when you talk about this global protectionism, it is a very important example with respect to the European Union. Next, imported inflation is also an issue. So it was 1.3% in June 24 and 31.1% in February 25. Now understand this concept of imported inflation. Imported inflation, this does not mean that 31.1% price rise. What it means is how much percentage increase in the prices is on account of imported inflation. So when you have inflation, that means you have increase in the prices. Okay. Now these prices are increasing because when you are producing things in our own country, it is charging more. But you also import goods and services. Import goods and services. Now when you import goods and services, their prices also increase. And there are domestic goods and services, their prices also increase. So if the prices have increased, let's say on 100 rupees, it has increased by 10 rupees. So 31.1% share in increase of the prices is on account of the imported inflation, right? That means out of the 10 rupees that has increased, 3.11 rupees have increased because of imported inflation, and 6.89 rupees has been increased because of domestic goods and services. Is that clear? So this is the concept of imported inflation. Okay? It's like India is importing inflation. Then as I told you, deadlock between India, European Union, India, Canada, deadlock with respect to the free trade agreement between these countries. Next, what are the measures that we can take to enhance resilience? Since protectionism is becoming so prevalent, we need to diversify. We need to diversify our import partners. We need to diversify our export partners. If USA increases the tariffs on us, we should find other countries who can buy the goods and services from us. So that is why multi-aligned trade strategies, that means diversification. Diversification of our trade with respect to import. Energy is one of the most important imports. With respect to exports, petroleum is an important export. Various agricultural goods are important exports. So we need to find out substitute countries. That means we need to diversify it. And of course, strengthen our own market, strengthen our own industry. When we strengthen our own industries, at the same price, our industry will be able to give a better quality. So even if the other countries put a higher tariff, our goods and services will be of a quality which the people will still demand. So that is important. You can use this challenge, that is an increased tariff, to modernize our industries faster, to improve their efficiency and quality of production even more. Because the idea for India to have tariff is what? To protect our industrial system, right? Because it is not developed much. And one more thing is there, if you keep on having very high tariffs on other countries' goods and services, you will always keep on protecting your industries. So that does not mean you don't protect them. Of course, you protect them in the short term as a correction, but as a long-term corrective action, you need to side by side also improve their capacity so that these tariffs do not have much impact and we can basically have the same level playing field. Then invest in climate smart agriculture, and you have cold chain storages, storage facilities for agriculture. For agriculture, one very important issue is the wastage. So you have to have proper infrastructure, storage facilities, specifically the cold storage facilities, because wastages are to the tune of 20% in horticultural crops. That is why cold storage will play a very important role, and the value of horticultural crops are also very high. Okay. The next thing is boost the indigenous research and development in artificial intelligence, 5G technology, even in agriculture. For example, we have seen that since 2009, we have not done any modification in our genetically modified BT cotton crop. So there also needs to be improvement in technology. Okay. Now, the Viksit Bharat that the minister has talked about, there are certain principles of Viksit Bharat. These I have mentioned here because these are the things you can use it in your answers. So if the question is about poverty, when you conclude your answer, mention about the Viksit Bharat's goal of zero poverty, ensuring no one, when you mention the solution, you can end it by saying that we can ensure the Viksit Bharat's goal of zero poverty, ensuring no one lives below the poverty line. So these things become really important for you to mention in your answers. Okay? Clear? This PDF will be shared with you. Next, GST 2.0. Now 2.0 GST. Now he's all of a sudden very much aware looking at the food. Right? These are all the things that I like. Okay. Anyway, so GST 2.0, an article has been written that says that it could probably undermine the dietary health. Why it could undermine the dietary health? Simply because the things which are not very considered to be very healthy would be taxed at a lower rate, and the things which are not that healthy, which are not healthy are taxed at a lower rate, and the things that are healthy would be taxed at a higher rate. So some examples here are the basic food item like pizza. Now basic we have written because it is under what? 5%. Under 5% what items are there? Essential. Basic essential. So the government has classified the pizza bread as a basic essential necessity. So they could read our minds. They understood that this is a basic essential necessity. This is going to be moved from 5 to 0. Sorry, this has to be moved from 5% to 0%. We'll see more on this. Next is the sugar-based products such as chocolates, jams, etc. 5% instead of 12 or 18% in which they were classified. Okay. One thing is good that aerated and sugar-based drinks. So you have your Pepsi, Thumbs Up, and maybe also Red Bull, etc. Now that will be charged at 40%. So my Pepsi and Thumbs Up is going to become costly now. All right. Okay. Let's move ahead. Now let's look at the healthier option. Now, very interestingly, this pizza is healthier. Maybe that's why it's not looking good. Huh? This pizza is healthier. Why? Because this pizza is made from the sourdough. Sourdough. Sour is one element and dough, that's the atta, is the other element. This pizza is made from a sourdough. Now, what is a sourdough? This article does not talk about it, but it's in news. So, healthier option like the sourdough. Now, this will be more costly. Sour is basically, we classify a taste as sour taste. So that sour taste comes from the lactic acid. The lactic acid bacteria, the bacteria that are there in the lactic acid. So this dough has that bacteria which is present in the lactic acid, and the dough is made up of that. So this yeast basically, when yeast is formed, it swells. That swelling is basically because of the deoxygenation process that is happening because of the bacteria. In this case, the lactic acid bacteria is causing that, which gives it a distinct sour taste. That is why it's known as sourdough. Remember, the lactic acid bacteria will be involved. It is healthy for your digestive system. See, the issue with this, you call it as maida, right? You call it as maida. Now, the issue here is the digestion is the issue. The fiber content is not that. But if you have sourdough, this is a healthier option over the usual pizza bread or the pizza base that you have. Okay? So remember this probably for your science and tech. Now, because of such kinds of differences in the duties, there would be an issue of non-communicable diseases further increasing. Now, India has been a very poor country. India has been socio-economically backward. Now, any country who is generally socio-economically backward, in those countries, you will see higher amount of communicable diseases. That is why for socio-economically backward countries, HDI, Human Development Index, you are calculating child mortality, mortality, birth rate for the child mortality, neonatal mortality, all those things become very important because communicable diseases are there. As the country's per capita income increases, the country becomes richer, the proportion of communicable diseases goes down, and the proportion of non-communicable diseases, also known as lifestyle diseases, increases. And India is presently seeing that phenomena wherein the proportion of non-communicable diseases are increasing. Diseases like heart diseases, cardiovascular diseases, basically you have diabetes, you have cancer, all those diseases are increasing. So the government's goal to stop or reduce the non-communicable diseases prevalence is going to be hampered because of this duty structure in GST. Okay? Now, what are the solutions that are being provided over here? See, one solution that you can simply say is revert the duty structure, right? You can revert the duty structure, but then if outside the economics, if you want a solution, one thing is about the labeling recommendation. So the Supreme Court has urged the FSSAI to come up with new labeling ideas, with new labeling guidelines in order to restrain the people from using it. Sometimes that does not work. For example, cigarettes, 80% of the front, 40 to 60% of the back of the cigarette you have to give warning, but still no one cares. It becomes so normalized. But anyway, in certain countries, certain things have worked. We will see that in Chile, for example, the advertising, the prohibition on the advertising has worked. So what happens is, how that concept works is, there is certain time in the day wherein children are watching the TV more, right? Monday to Friday they are going to school, so maybe from 8 to 2 there's no child that is watching. So that time maybe you are advertising whatever you want. After that, when the children's prime time is there, wherein the children watch the most, you should avoid advertisements of these products. This was done. You can quote the case study of Chile. Chile did this, which led to a decrease in the demand for such unhealthy products. However, it goes against the capitalism, against the business motive. If I am having a business of, let's say, UPSC institute, so I am going to give advertisements wherein most of the UPSC students are going to watch. So if most UPSC student watches a particular YouTube channel, I am going to place my ad over there. Now, if you prohibit me from doing so, you are going to reduce my efficiency of generating leads and selling my course, and hence that will affect my profit margin. Okay? That will affect my profit margin. So it is going to be a trade-off. Are you concerned about the health of the people? If yes, then you reduce that. If no, then you carry on with that. So since the article is about the health issues that it will cause, so that is why we are probably giving this suggestion. We have this. Right. So Chile, there was a complete survey that was done, in which it was seen that what are the times. It's a report. Since that report was not that important, the research paper, but this research paper saw that there was a decline in consumption of the food, or the unhealthy foods that are main target are the children. That means the sugar-coated candies, the sugar-coated drinks. So they stopped the advertisement in those hours, and wherein they saw that the amount of restriction, if you look at it, this on the children, some are children specific channels also, like you have Nickelodeon, you have Cartoon Network, etc. Children's, and then you have if more than 20% of the audience is less than 14 years, if the channel is a children channel, or the children targeted programs or the children targeted times, you identify these things first. Under these things, you basically banned beyond 6 AM, ban advertisement restriction. You are restricting them to advertise during this time. When you have restricted, they have seen a decline in consumption of approximately 20% of those specific food articles whose advertisement was stopped. Okay? So this is a research data, a case study in which in Chile that has happened. So the data or the percentage, etc., or what was this thing, 20% audience, more than 40, all this is not important, because this is an independent study that has been done. What is important is an independent study was done which found that in Chile, when the advertisement was blocked or banned or prohibited on child-specific channels or during the child watching hours, then they have seen a decline in the consumption of the unhealthy food items. Because even if you look at our houses, wherein if there are children, they see the advertisement, they see something, they crave for that thing. and then they do tantrums for that. And until and unless you get them that, they are not going to stop crying. Okay? So that is what the child psychology thing is. Okay? So this could be a statement, India could model its approach based on Chile. Now, recommendations for GST health policy alignment. How can you align the policy? There is a concept of high-in warning. So, as I said, you can change the tax structure also. What is high-in warning? High-in. This high-in is basically high intake. Means if you have a high intake of that thing, it is going to be very serious issue. So, high intake of sugar. High intake of sugar as compared to how much you should have. How much you are having is quite high. That high intake of sugar is quite common and it is going to have a big issue. So that high in warning should be there on that. High in warning in the sense that if you are having a Pepsi bottle is of 2.5 liters also. Now someone could buy that and drink it on their own. So there needs to be a high intake warning. That if you intake this beyond this limit, it is going to cause you these issues. So that is the concept of high intake warning. So any food item, any processed food item or any item that requires high intake warning needs to be taxed, can be taxed at a higher rate is one of the suggestions. Then you can utilize the syntax revenue that is generated to address the NCD prevention, non-communicable diseases prevention. Okay, so these are the few suggestions which could be provided. Next, yes, let's come to this. China digs in on rare earth, commands the global market. Chalo, okay, this is the news title, but let's understand what it is talking about. So basically the idea is that China is dominating the rare earth mineral. Now I said that we call it rare earth mineral. Now why do we call it rare earth mineral? Because it's rare. That's what, na? Critical. Okay, then that should be critical earth mineral. Yes. Not found anywhere itself means rare, right? Not found everywhere itself means rare. So we have an understanding that they are rarely found. That is why rare earth mineral. The issue with them is the issue of extraction. The issue of extraction. They are found in various regions of the world. The issue is the percentage with which they are attached as an alloy is very less. So if you have KGF gold mine, you are going to dig. So the ore that is going to come, 1 kg of ore is going to have good amount of gold, which is enough for you to economically extract that ore, convert it into gold and sell it off for profit. That is not the case with these rare earth minerals. These rare earth minerals are those minerals that are present throughout the different regions of the world, but their extraction is quite difficult because it is not cost effective. If you extract 1 kg of ore, the amount of these 17 rare earth minerals that are there will be so less that you would not be profitably be able to extract it. That is why China, as I mentioned, has approximately 48% of production they are having. But if you talk about the processing monopoly, 85 to 90% of the refining capacity is with China. That means what? That means even when USA is extracting the rare earth minerals, it ships it to China to get it processed. So China not only processes their own rare earth minerals, they processes others' rare earth minerals also. So it's not just the amount of reserves that they hold, but the capacity of the processing that they do. Now the question is why they are able to do it and we are not able to do it, or even the USA is not able to do it. So one question would be, it is not as if that USA is not technologically advanced, but the problem is when you are processing these rare earth minerals, that leads to a huge amount of toxicity in the atmosphere to the tune of even radioactivity in the atmosphere. That is why China has designated areas or regions wherein they do the processing of these rare earth minerals. These regions are very close to Mongolia. These regions are surrounding the region of Mongolia, right? Less population density of the Chinese citizens over there, not much important with respect to the human lives for China as such. So they have formed industries which refine this. The toxicity and the radioactivity is released in the atmosphere in the region which would be destroying them, but they have separated it from the rest of the Chinese society. So they are bearing the cost of human lives, the negative impact on the human that will happen in account to be able to process it. Whereas if you look at in a country like USA or even a country like India, we have very strict regulations with respect to the industry that is formed, with respect to the guidelines that it should uphold, right? So this is a very important point in this particular thing. You have the entire write-up. I think that write-up mentions that as well. Okay? Now, the strategic importance is, of course, they are important for electric vehicle batteries, for solar panels, for wind turbines. They are also important for ceramics. Now, these ceramics can be for your dishware or dishes, etc. But also the ceramics are also used in the electronic instruments as capacitors, as resistors, right? So if you have a small wire in which on top of it there will be a ceramic, that ceramic will have the rare earth mineral which will be acting as a capacitor. What is a capacitor? A capacitor is basically going to store the energy inside it. So these are used in ceramics. Ceramics can be for daily household use as well. Ceramics are also present in the electronic equipment. Have you seen the fuse? Fuse, when the light goes off, the fuse gets cut because of change in voltage. There is something, you take it out. What is that fuse made up of? It is a ceramic, right? You have not seen this kind of a, it's just a rectangular thing, right? So it is made up of ceramic. It looks like a clay. Ceramic, the material with which your dishes or plates or bowls will be made. So it has the amount of rare earth minerals in it. Okay? That is going to help. Okay? Various other things are mentioned. You have this NdFeB magnets. These NdFeB magnets are basically permanent magnets. So whenever you have a permanent magnet, it is known as basically the NdFeB magnet. Don't go much in detail with it, but know that these are permanent magnets. That means that there will also be some magnets which are temporary, right? They are generally known as the electromagnet. Why electromagnet? Their magnetism will exist till the time the electricity is generated. By the revolution of some wheel or something, electromagnetic field is created, and they will have the magnetic field till the time that is running. The moment you stop it, the magnetism goes away. So they are temporary magnets known as electromagnets. These NdFeB magnets are actually permanent in nature. Okay? Geopolitical importance, of course, very important, because China at times has suspended the export of rare earth minerals, have stopped processing the minerals for others. So every time China and USA may go to tariff war or economy war, they can have the nerves of USA in their hand. It holds a very big importance. USA is world's second largest importer, right, of rare earth minerals. And India, look at India, imports 75% of its rare earth elements from China, despite having 7.7, means we have 7.7 of the world's reserve, but still we are importing. Why? Because extraction, economically extraction, plus the health implications when you are going to refine it. Okay? So we have a high dependency. So there can be supply chain weaponization, which China has previously also done against the United States of America. India's position, if you look at it, 7.7% of the world's reserves we have. It is present in the coastal monazite sand in Kerala, in Odisha, in Tamil Nadu, where we have the rare earth mineral reserves. This is the world reserve of rare earth minerals. China, approximately 49. This is India. Where is India? India is not mentioned in this. Yes, around 8%. This is the 2024 estimate. So close to 8%, 7.7, close to 8%. Okay. Next. Any questions? You understood the concept of rare earth minerals? So what is the diplomacy of it? We all know, right? Next is Cotton import duty cut. So removal of the 11% import duty on cotton. So on cotton there was import duty. That means when you are importing cotton, you will have to pay an additional duty which is going to make the cotton costlier. Right? Now that is gone. That means what? Now the import of cotton is going to be cheap. Right? Now you tell me guys, what will be the implications of it? Ji boliye? Domestic market. How does it affect? ठीक है, people will buy the imported cotton instead of the cotton that is domestically grown. What else? Farmers will get affected. What else? That's it.
So when we say cotton as in form of textile?
No, not in form of textile. Cotton, raw cotton.
With all the seeds?
No, not all the seeds. Seeds are separated, only cotton. You have a cotton wrapped up in paper, you get it in the pharmacy. Cotton.
I meant like other kind of even like hybrid seeds are there also for cotton.
Huh.
So including that I was asking.
I didn't get you. What?
So like India hybrid
Huh.
varieties, like how we have BT cotton.
BT cotton, right.
So like that, that is also considered like any kind of.
Any kind of cotton. Cotton in general had an import duty. Now that has been removed. What impact it will have? So that's what I'm asking. What impact I'll have? I did not deny it. Example. Exactly. That is the positive impact. Now the cotton will be cheaper for the textile industries. So the textile industry is going to be happy because of this decision, and the farmer or the cotton creators, cotton producers are not going to be happy because of this. Is that clear? So it has double impact on it. Now in textile, we are facing a lot of problem when it comes to textile against the countries like Bangladesh, Vietnam, which are exporting textile at a way more cheaper rate than India. So this is going to help India to compete with those countries and increase our textile export. And remember, there is a mission of the government to increase the export of the textiles in general. Is that clear? So it is going to help that. However, the disadvantage is, of course, that the farmers will be affected. They may not be able to realize the prices may go down, so their price realization may also go down. Okay? Now here the government can help them out with the MSP anyway. MSP, because if it goes very much down, MSP can be there because MSP is already there on raw cotton. So this is a good time for the government of India to increase their purchase in other crops other than the rice and wheat that is there. Okay? This chart is about this one is important. Yes, this chart. I think the blue line is the exports that we are doing. Now remember, India historically was a cotton importing country. Before the BT cotton and all existed, we used to import a huge amount of cotton. But after BT cotton's introduction, we became a net exporter of cotton. That has happened possible because of the BT cotton that is there. So if you look at this export and import of raw cotton between 97 and 24-25, that is close to 30 years. So in 24-25 imports touched. So here you look at the graph only. So here you can see the exports in tons. Look at the exports is basically zero, and look at the imports are quite high, right? But BT cotton gets introduced when? 2009, right? This is 2010-11. So here somewhere is 2009. BT cotton is introduced, it goes high, and it further goes high. Our exports are quite high. Okay? However, now what is going to happen is, since the import duty has gone down, the imports might further increase. Okay? So it is going to help the consumers, help the textile industries, but may affect the farmers. What is the significance of cotton? Of course, it's a critical material for the textile industries. Also, one of the largest employers are especially women in the textile industry. Same is the case in Bangladesh and Vietnam also. But one issue that they face is very low salaries is what they get. Anyway, that is not the point of discussion now. So price declines, as we discussed, are going to affect the farmers. So what should be the way forward here? The way forward should be, instead of reducing the import duty, which is going to reduce the cost of cotton, which is going to help our textile, why not do research and development? Because since 2009, there is no further advancement in BT cotton. Our productivity in cotton is around 440 kgs per hectare, whereas China is 1900 kgs per, over 1900 kgs per hectare. So we need to have research and development so that our productivity increases, prices will go down, we will not have to depend on import bill will go down, our farmers will not suffer, textile industry will also be benefited. Okay, so that is the very first. Strengthen the farm to firm linkages. This farm to firm linkages is basically efficiency in the supply chain. The farmers directly providing to the textile industries or to the final producers that are there, so that they can get higher prices rather than giving it to the middlemen that exist. But if the middlemen don't take it, the middlemen will also lose their job. But presently, middlemen earn a lot of money without much of the labor that is involved. They benefit from the labor of the farmers, right? So that is one thing. Rationalize the MSP, as we have already discussed. Rationalize the MSP and the procurement policy. Rationalize means the government is not procuring even though the MSP is there. So the government should start procuring. Since cotton is in news, you can also read about the pink bollworm, right? That will be probably part of your environment and science and tech, the stages of the formation of the pink bollworm. It is a bollworm, so every worm has the same stage of formation. So there's nothing different about it. Okay, next, SPRE 2025. Now, what is this SPRE 2025? How it is going to help? In SPRE 2025, the employers and the employees can register themselves. So basically, you have to get registered on the government portal. Register what? For example, I register myself on the government portal, or the academy registers me on the government portal as their employee. Right, because see what happens is people can work in the unorganized sector. So let's say, for example, this was an unorganized sector wherein they take a lot of money in cash and they also pay a lot of money to the faculties in cash. So what will happen? What will happen is I will not be taxed because money is in cash. Until and unless I tell the government how much I am earning, the government will not as such get to know. Of course, when I buy things and it gets registered in my name, some amount of knowledge they will have, but it's quite a distant thing. Okay? But that does not happen. What happens here is the payment is received online. So it goes into my bank account. So they also pay their GST, they also pay it online, I also get it online. So we have no other option but to pay the tax. Okay? But the people who are doing this, who are evading taxes, right? So for them, the government wants them to get registered. But the companies don't register their employees because when they register, there are a lot of issues, a lot of compliance that has to be done. In one of our classes, we discussed that the compliance should not come all of a sudden, all at once, but rather should come in a staged manner. Now what has happened, let's say for example, there is a company that is existing from 2010. It has been 15 years. And let's say right now they have 50 employees, but none of them is registered. And no one has the knowledge how much this company is earning, how much these people are earning. So they are as good as in the unorganized sector. No one is paying any taxes. So now if the company goes and starts to register saying that I have 50 employees, I want to register, what will happen? The government would have asked, why have you not registered so far? And there are 50, all of a sudden, how did it start? Where did you get the fund from? All those questions will come. So you were having these employees since the last 15 years. You have to pay certain penalties. You have not paid taxes. You might be charged some amount of money. There might be some penalization that will happen. So because of this, what can happen is, companies which have not registered themselves since long will never ever register only, right? So to avoid that, to facilitate the companies from registering when they start right now, the government will have separate ease of doing business. But to facilitate the companies to register themselves and their employees who have not registered since a long time, the government has come up with the scheme known as the SPRE 2025. In this, the provision is the government says you come, you register your employees with us. If you have not told us about it for the last 10, 20, any amount of years, it does not matter. We will not punish you. We will not charge you. There will be no tax. There will be no penalty on you. So this is a one-time chance for such employers and employees to register themselves on the government portal as the employee of the organized sector without any questions being asked. So there will be no questions asked. There will be no question asked. It is a one-time window. Of course, they have to say it's a one-time window. Even though the government may come up with this in the next 10 years, but still they have to say one-time window. Why? Because if they say this is one of the times we will come up with such schemes later also, then I may still not register. So that is why it is a one-time window for them to register. The scheme name is Scheme for Promoting Registration of Employers and Employee. With the help of this, more of the unorganized sector is going to get converted into the organized sector. Okay? So one-time opportunity for any, it can include temporary, contractual workers, whatever employees you have to give them this indication. Now the key features is what? No scrutiny of the past record. They are not going to scrutinize since when your organization had established, how many employees you have, no scrutiny whatsoever, no liability of any past contribution, protection from actions for earlier non-registration. You had not registered early, there could have been punishment under Shop Establishment Act, under Companies Act, under different acts. No punishment will accrue to you, no demand for the previous dues of taxes or anything whatsoever. So all the sins, it is like you are doing a pilgrimage, all the sins are washed off now. Now you can probably do new sins again. Okay? Clear? The scheme is clear? Yeah, that is the benefit. Yes, that is the only benefit. Because once you get registered, next year onwards you will have to pay. Next year onwards you have to abide by the rules and regulations that are there, definitely. Next year onwards then you will have to give them also proper contract if you have not given it so far. Next time onwards you cannot just simply fire them, all those things. For example, I have an agreement with this institute. They, unless and until I do a very unlawful activity, in which case they can kick me out. But if not, they cannot randomly say from tomorrow don't come. They'll have to give me a 1 month notice. So that's a safety net that is provided to me, right? So safety nets, all those things will come, which will be benefit for the employee. But at the same time, there can be certain burden on the employers, of course. Okay? So they will come under the usual tax net, usual organized sector. So whatever is the provision, they have to abide by it. But whatever wrongs that they have done by not registering, not paying, all of that is completely forgiven. Okay? Any questions? No questions? Sure. Let's look at a few quick questions that are here. After the topic, the questions become easy. With reference to 21st Annual Global Investors Conference, consider the following. India recorded highest quarterly GDP growth. Read down please. I hope everyone can see this. Yes. India recorded the highest quarterly GDP growth since 2020 with Q1 of financial year 25 registering 7.8. Now you know that this is correct. What you don't know is this. Okay? So why I have mentioned this is generally in UPSC statements. If there are two statements, generally if one is correct, other becomes correct. Anyway, but I'll anyhow tell you. Next is the government announced GST 2.0, which simplified taxation and is expected to reduce demand in the short run. See, first is correct, it is factual. Since growth since 2020, it's the highest for Q1. So Q1 of 2020-21, Q1 of 2021-22, if you compare all the Q1s, this is the highest. This is factually correct. Second one is conceptual. The government announced GST 2.0, which simplified taxation. All this we know. And is expected to reduce the demand in the short run. It's incorrect. It is going to increase the demand. In fact, the government has mentioned that since GST 2.0, we are reducing the taxes. I told in the last current affairs class that the government is going to take a hit of close to 48,000 crore, but this hit will be balanced by the increased demand. So when the demand is increased, instead of you are having only 2 goods you are buying, instead of 2 you are buying now 3 goods. So demand is going to increase, which is going to address the tax hit which the government is going to take. Next, with reference to GST rate simplification in India, consider the following. Under the new GST structure, both aerated drinks and sugar-based drinks fall under a 40% tax bracket. Yes. Some goods are important for you to remember. I think there was a question in 2018 about GST. Very difficult question that was. The institutes were confused as to what will be the answer, because the options, they asked which of the following are exempted from GST, and then they said advertisement in newspapers. Now advertisement probably is taxed, newspapers are not taxed. So whether advertisement in newspaper is taxed or not. Then egg, if you are consuming egg from a restaurant, so egg is a agricultural produce, maybe it's not taxed, but I am consuming from the hotel, so yes, it is taxed. So they gave quite a difficult options. There can be simple options this time. Anyway, first is correct. Second, the Supreme Court has directed the FSSAI to prioritize health star rating instead of warning labels. That's incorrect. Supreme Court has asked them to prioritize the warning labels. See, you are giving the health star. You are focusing on the positive. So health star is 2, 3, 4, 1, but still it's a health star. Rather give me a warning. If you do this, you will go to hell. That's a warning. So that's when people will be afraid to do certain things. Correct? So what will be the answer here? Only one. Next, with reference to global rare earth supply chain, consider the following. China nearly controls 90% of global refining capacity of rare earths. Yes. See, that is why it is not right to compare India's growth rate with China. India grows along with, we may be a flawed democracy, but we still are democracy. We still hold democratic values. We still have unity. We still value things, right? At the same time, it is not that easy to completely disregard the safety and security of the people. The people also revolt. The people protest. And the protest is basically having an impact. In China, there is no protest. You protest, the army will come, kill everyone, and then that's it, done. End of story. Okay? So, that is the subjectivity of it. This is correct. Next. Japan and US together account for more than half of China's rare earth exports. We've seen this. It's there in that, na? Check out the percentage. Let me open the PPT here. Yes, more than half. Let's check it. This is a factual question. Let's check this. I think it's yes. This is the rare earth mineral, right? Yes. Yes. Japan 20, trade partners, Japan 28%, US is 25%. Yes, it's more. It is more, and in trade here, basically they are importing only. They are not providing it to China. So, of course, this is trade partners, but this entire percentage of 28% and 25% is basically the import that they are having. So that is more than, that's why I saw 20 plus. So yes, it is correct. Yes, I'll tell you that. Yes, I'll tell you that. So what happens is, when China is exporting, they are exporting the rare earth minerals in the processed form also. Also, when USA extracts it, so USA extracts it, sends it to China. China processes it, refines it, and sends the rare earth minerals back. So they send the ores to China, right? Because USA gives a damn about their population living or dying. So they send it to China. China does not care. China processes it, refines it, toxicity in the environment, radioactivity in the environment, and it gives it back to the USA. Okay, it's like the crude oil. We are buying, we are using what we want. China does not even want to use because it has enough, and then it refines it and sends it back. That is also what they're doing. Both the things they're doing. Yes, it is going to be considered as import part. Next, with reference to cotton imports, consider the following statements. Cotton import rose by over 70% in 24-25 despite the duty. Number 2, India's domestic cotton cost remains lower than the global prices. India's domestic cotton cost remains lower than the global prices. This is incorrect. It is higher. That is why if you remove the import duty, the cost of the imported cotton will be less. That is why the farmers are going to be affected. If India's was the lowest, the import would have not created any issue whatsoever. Cotton imports rose by over 70%. Yes, even before the removal, we saw that there was a spike upwards, and we saw that this could further increase. So that quantum was slightly over 70%. Let's look at the last question probably. SPRE. Employers registration under the scheme must pay past contributions for unregistered workers. It is false. Registration can be done through ESIC portal, Shram Suvidha portal, the NCA portals. These are the three. These are the only 3 portals that are allowed. So please remember them. This is correct. Okay? Any questions? Right? Please go home and revise. If you revise it right now, you will become foolproof with it. You have been given a document, read and revise from it. Then what will happen is you will understand all the possibilities of the questions and you remember it in compartment. You will not face any issue. Okay? Thank you.